This podcast is brought to you by Getty.
Welcome to another episode of the AI Analysis Podcast. We're trying something new today. We're taking a look at a TV show that we think everyone should watch.
Yes. This show's a bit of an enigma, though. Jake, the leader of our podcast network, always describes this show as one that he should hate, but loves it, and can't explain why.
He does say that, yeah.
So today, we're going to pull back the curtain on this acclaimed series, Mad Men.
That's right. We're unpacking Mad Men, the show that ran from, 2007 to 2015?
7 seasons, 92 episodes.
Right. And it's generally called a drama, epic period drama, sometimes a workplace drama.
Yep, all set in that really high-stakes world of a New York advertising agency back in the 1960s.
And the IMDb rating is pretty impressive, 8.7 out of 10 from, over 277,000 people. That tells you something.
It really does. It wasn't just another show.
Okay.
So we're going to explore what makes it so captivating, so enduring, and honestly, why it's still debated quite a bit.
Okay.
We'll look at the world they built, which is just meticulously crafted. The
Right.
characters are so complex.
Yeah.
And the controversies it tackled, sometimes head on. Plus, its impact, which was pretty significant, on TV and culture.
So by the end, you listening should have a much clearer picture of why this show still resonates, even years after it finished.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's start by setting the stage. What's Mad Men really about at its core? And that title, Mad Men, where did that actually come from?
Right. So at its heart, Mad Men is about this very prestigious New York ad agency. First, it's Sterling Cooper, then later becomes Sterling Cooper Draper Price.
Right on Madison Avenue.
Exactly, right there on Madison Avenue in Manhattan, kicking off right at the beginning of the 1960s. The main focus is really on Don Draper, played by John Hamm. He's like the star ad executive. Very talented, but also incredibly mysterious.
Okay, and the Mad Men name?
So the show itself, in the pilot episode, says it was a nickname that advertisers working on Madison Avenue came up with for themselves back in the 50s.
Mad. For Madison, you know?
It is. But interestingly, the historical record is a bit fuzzier. Some research suggests the only documented use of that specific phrase from back then might be from the late 50s, from an ad exec and writer named James Kelly.
Huh. So the show might have sort of solidified that term?
Possibly, or just ran with a cool-sounding explanation. Either way, it perfectly grounds you in that world from the get-go.
It really does. So it runs from 1960 to 1970. How well does it capture that decade? Because that was a huge period of change.
Oh, absolutely monumental. The show covers March 1960 to November 1970, precisely, and it uses that backdrop masterfully. It's not just wallpaper.
Right.
It explores how that whole post-World War II recovery society, driven by consumerism, started to kind of crack into the pressure of all the social and political rebellion that was starting to bubble up.
So you see things like the JFK assassination.
Yep. JFK's assassination, the moon landing, civil rights, Vietnam, all of it. And the brilliance is how these huge historical events subtly, or sometimes, very directly, affect the characters' lives, their choices, and the changing social rules.
So the history isn't just happening around them, it's happening to them.
Exactly. It shapes their experiences in really profound ways.
Okay, and that brings us to the characters. The show is just famous for its character development. Can you walk us through some of the key players? What makes them so compelling?
Oh, definitely. The ensemble cast is incredible. Each one feels so real, so layered.
Yeah.
Let's talk about a few core ones.
Okay.
First, obviously, Don Draper. John Hamm. He's the magnetic creative director, later a partner. The archetype. Hard-drinking, chain-smoking, advertising genius.
Right, the guy everyone wants to be or thinks they do.
Kind of. But that brilliance is hiding this massive secret, this deeply troubled double life. We find out pretty early on his real name is actually Richard Whitman, or Dick Whitman.
Ah, the big secret.
Yeah. He stole the identity of his commanding officer, Lieutenant Don Draper, who died in the Korean War. He did it to desert the army and basically escape this really impoverished and traumatic past.
Wow.
So that deception, plus his constant cheating, his kind of existential emptiness, that's central to his whole character arc. He's this perfect image on the outside, but inside, just turmoil.
And then there's Peggy Olson, Elizabeth Moss. Her journey is amazing.
Oh, Peggy's fantastic. She starts as Don's secretary, very meek, very much playing the expected role. But she quickly finds out she has this real knack, this passion for copywriting.
And she climbs the ladder.
She really does. Rises through the ranks, gets her own office. Her story is maybe the clearest example of the show exploring gender roles and the rise of feminism in that era. Just watching her navigate that incredibly sexist world is fascinating.
Yeah, you really root for her.
Definitely. Then you got Pete Campbell. Vincent Kartheiser plays him. He's the young, ambitious account executive. Comes from this, like, old money New York family with all the connections.
But he's kind of desperate.
Totally desperate. For success, for recognition. He's often driven by insecurity and entitlement, which makes him complicated. Sometimes you hate him. Sometimes you almost feel sorry for him.
Right. And Betty Draper, Don's wife, January Jones.
Betty, yeah, Don's first wife, mother of their kids, Sally, Bobby, Jean. She's a former model. Initially seems like the perfect suburban housewife, but she slowly becomes aware of Don's cheating.
And that changes her.
Profoundly. She eventually divorces Don, marries Henry Francis, a political advisor. Her story is quite tragic, especially towards the end when she develops terminal lung cancer. She really represents the constraints on women in that time, even privileged ones.
Okay. And Joan Holloway, Christina Hendricks, she's iconic.
Joan is absolutely iconic. Starts as the office manager, head of the secretaries. She's incredibly smart, savvy, knows how to work the system in that very male-dominated office. Uses her looks, but also her brains.
She has that long affair with Roger Sterling.
Uh-huh. A very complicated relationship. Her journey is complex, too. She navigates a lot of sexism, eventually becomes a partner through some controversial means, and finally decides to start her own production company. From a real survivor and power player in her own way.
And Roger Sterling himself, John Slattery.
Roger.
Yeah.
One of the senior partners at Sterling Cooper, kind of a mentor figure to Don initially, World War II Navy vet. He's charming, witty, but also a notorious womanizer, heavy drinker, heavy smoker.
Manages the big Lucky Strike account, right?
Yeah, that's crucial early on. It's like half their business. He has a couple heart attacks that shake him up a bit, but, well, his habits don't change that much. He represents that older generation grappling with the changing times.
And Bert Cooper, his quirky older partner.
Robert Morris, brilliantly played, the eccentric senior partner. He's kind of hands-off day-to-day, leaves that to Don and Roger, but his influence is definitely felt. He's a staunch Republican, loved Japanese culture, big Ayn Rand fan.
Yeah.
Always barefoot in the office.
Yeah.
He adds this sort of strange philosophical element to the firm.
And there are others, too, like Lane Price.
Right, Lane Price, the British financial officer who comes in, becomes a partner, has a very dramatic arc.
Sally Draper, Don and Betty's daughter.
Yes. Sally's journey growing up is so important. Her relationship with her parents, especially Betty, is really fraught. She reflects the turbulence of the era through a child's eyes, then a teenager's.
And Megan, Don's second wife.
Megan Calvert, yeah. Starts as a receptionist, marries Don, pursues acting. She represents a different kind of modern woman compared to Betty or Peggy. The show just weaves these characters together so well, revealing things slowly. It's like this addictive puzzle you're trying to solve without easy answers.
Okay, so that's the world, the characters. Let's talk production. The show feels so incredibly realized. What was the vision behind it? How did it even get made? It sounds like it almost didn't.
It almost didn't. It's a great story. Matthew Weiner created it. And get this, he wrote the first draft of the pilot script way back in 2000.
Wow, really?
Yeah, as a spec script while he was a staff writer on the sitcom Becker. Can you imagine?
That's wild. So it just sat there.
A couple of years. Then David Chase, the creator of The Sopranos, read it in 2002. He was so impressed, he hired Weiner to write for The Sopranos.
Okay, that's a big endorsement.
Huge. Chase said the script was lively, had something new to say. He loved how it looked at American history through the lens of advertising. That specific angle was key.
So did HBO want it then? Because of Chase?
They were interested. But here's the catch. HBO insisted David Chase had to be an executive producer on Mad Men for them to pick it up.
And Chase said no.
He declined. He supported Weiner, but didn't want that role. So HBO passed. Later, HBO CEO Richard Plepler actually called passing on Mad Men his biggest regret. Said it was pure hubris.
Ouch. Showtime passed too.
Showtime passed too. It wasn't until years later, around 2006, that Weiner's team pitched it to AMC. AMC was just starting to dip its toes into original series, mostly known for movies back then.
So AMC took a risk.
A big risk. Ed Carroll, the AMC Network's president, basically said they took a gamble, betting that quality would win out over trying to make something with formulaic mass appeal. And boy, did that bet pay off. It put AMC on the map for prestige TV.
Absolutely. And the look of the show, that distinct style, what were the big influences there?
Weiner talked about a few key things. Alfred Hitchcock was huge, especially films like North by Northwest. You see it everywhere, even the opening credits we'll talk about.
Yeah, the visual style feels very cinematic.
Exactly. Director Wong Kar-wai was another influence for the music choices, the mise-en-scène. How everything is placed in the shot and the editing style gives it that sort of moody, atmospheric quality sometimes.
Interesting. Any other influences?
He also mentioned, maybe surprisingly, shows like MAH and Happy Days. Not for the style, but as sort of touchstones for culture, things that reminded people about misconceptions in the past.
Okay.
But crucially, he said Mad Men would have been way different. Maybe more like a crisp, soapy version of The West Wing, if it hadn't been for his time on The Sopranos.
Ah, because The Sopranos went deep into the character's psychology.
Precisely. Weiner said The Sopranos showed him how to explore characters' psychic scars, their complicated inner lives, like Peggy dealing with giving up her baby. He said that probably wouldn't have occurred to him as a story beat before The Sopranos.
And the historical detail is just phenomenal. It feels so authentic. How did they actually achieve that?
Just relentless, meticulous work. The writers, Weiner included, did mountains of research on the 60s. They obsessed over accuracy in almost everything: set design, costumes, even tiny props.
Like what kind of details?
Well, John Hamm mentioned that the researchers would demand to know the exact weather conditions for a specific day in the script, or what was in the news, what songs were popular, just to make sure everything lined up.
That's intense.
Totally. The pilot was shot in New York City, which helped set the initial vibe. But then they moved production to Los Angeles Center Studios for the rest of the series. That's where they built those incredibly detailed sets.
And being shot in HD probably helped showcase all that detail.
Definitely. High definition really made that rich visual style pop. The whole look was a very careful collaboration between Weiner, the cinematographer Phil Abraham, and the production designers Robert Shaw and Dan Bishop. They all wanted that cinema over television feel.
You mentioned shooting Don Draper differently.
Yeah, to keep that air of mystery around him, they'd often shoot him from behind or frame him so he was partly hidden. Made you constantly wonder what he was thinking.
And the low camera angles in the office.
Right. Shooting lower than eye level to include the ceilings, that was a deliberate choice to reflect photography and architecture from the period. And they avoided things like shaky handheld camera work. They designed the sets specifically for smooth dolly shots, keeping that classic controlled visual language.
Okay, with all that detail, the budget must have been pretty high, especially for basic cable back then.
It was definitely substantial, a real investment. Each episode cost somewhere between $2 and $2.5 million to make. And the pilot was even more, over $3 million. Now, Lionsgate, the studio, got about $2.7 million per episode from AMC in licensing fees. So slightly less than the cost up front.
But it made money later.
Oh, yeah. Big time. Home video, iTunes sales estimates are around $100 million over the show's run. International syndication added another chunk, maybe $700,000 per episode.
And streaming deals. Netflix.
Exactly. That Netflix deal in 2011 was huge. Estimates were anywhere from $70 to $100 million, so it became very profitable. And Matthew Weiner himself got a big contract, reportedly $30 million, to stay on for the last 3 seasons.
But the actors didn't get rich from it. I remember reading something about that.
Yeah. January Jones mentioned in an interview that the actors weren't paid huge sums compared to maybe network shows or movies. But she also acknowledged the value of a steady gig on such a respected show. It definitely raised everyone's profile.
Okay, let's circle back to that opening title sequence. It's so iconic. What's the story behind it?
It really is one of the all-time greats. You've got the credits rolling over this animation of a businessman silhouetted, falling endlessly down between skyscrapers, and you see reflections of old ads flashing by.
And that music by RJD2, A Beautiful Mind.
Perfect music choice. Captures that mix of 60s cool and something darker, more uncertain. The visuals themselves are a very direct homage to the graphic designer Saul Bass.
Who did work for Hitchcock.
Exactly. Specifically, the titles for North by Northwest with all the buildings and the falling man image from the Vertigo movie poster. Weiner explicitly said Hitchcock was a major visual influence, and you see it right there in the opening. It perfectly sets the tone, identity, falling, the allure and danger of the city and the business.
No wonder TV Guide ranked it so high, like number 9 all-time best credit sequence.
It deserves it. Instantly recognizable, perfectly thematic.
And the music within the show itself, the score, the pop songs, just as memorable.
Definitely. David Carbonara did the original score, and it's fantastic. Really subtle and effective at underlining the emotions. They even released a soundtrack of his score.
And the way episodes end is very distinct, too.
Yeah, that fade to black, or sometimes a hard smash cut to black. Then they play either a piece of period music or one of Carbonara's themes over the credits. It gives each episode this really final, often contemplative feeling.
Sometimes the music playing a scene carries over, right?
Diegetic music. Like, if a song is playing on a radio in the scene, it might just continue playing as the credits roll. It's a great technique.
And they spent big money on some songs, didn't they? The Beatles.
Oh yeah, the Beatles story is legendary. For the season 5 episode Lady Lazarus, they wanted to use Tomorrow Never Knows. Getting rights for Beatles songs for TV is notoriously difficult and expensive.
How much did it cost?
Lionsgate reportedly paid $250,000. $250,000.
For one song in one episode.
Yep. Just tells you how committed they were to getting the exact right piece of music for that specific moment. That's serious artistic commitment and budget flexibility.
Wow. Let's talk about the writing. Consistently praised, so sharp, so subtle. What made that writing room special?
Well, first off, Matthew Weiner's control was immense. He wasn't just the creator, he was the showrunner, head writer, executive producer. He reportedly had final say on pretty much everything.
Wrote or co-wrote every script.
That's the claim. And approved all the costumes, set designs. He was known for being very protective of the show's details, keeping things secret even from the cast sometimes. It ensured a really singular vision.
And the writer's room itself had a unique makeup, right?
Yeah, this is really interesting. By the 3rd season, 7 out of the 9 writers on staff were women.
That seems unusual, especially back then.
Hugely unusual. The Writers Guild stats from 2006 showed male writers outnumbered female writers 2-to-1 across the industry. But the executive producers, Weiner and Scott Hornbacher, apparently just hired based on talent, Maria Jacques-Menton, another producer, said they asked, "Can you capture this world? Can you bring great storytelling?" It wasn't about gender.
That's pretty cool, especially for a show digging into gender dynamics.
Absolutely. And it wasn't just the writers. Some of the cast directed episodes too. John Hamm, John Slattery, Jared Harris. Just a lot of talent involved at every level.
Okay, we're back. Beyond the stellar production and writing, Mad Men is really known for how it reflects 1960s American society, warts and all. What were some of the big societal themes it tackled?
Oh, it covered a huge range, and often didn't pull punches. You had the constant smoking and drinking, obviously. But also rampant sexism, the beginnings of feminism, adultery is almost a default setting for the men, homophobia, anti-Semitism, racism.
Heavy stuff.
Definitely. And underlying all that were themes of alienation, this constant striving for social mobility, a certain ruthlessness required to succeed. What was clever was how it showed these things through the characters' daily lives, not through like big preachy statements.
Made it feel more real, less like a history lesson.
Exactly. It was history lived through these flawed, complex people.
And Matthew Weiner specifically chose the 60s because of the pill. Is that right?
That was a huge factor for him, yeah. He said that whenever he looked for an interesting story, something big seemed to happen right around 1960. But the introduction of the birth control pill in March 1960 was, in his words, the largest change in the entire world.
Wow, largest change.
He felt it fundamentally altered the central tension in storytelling, especially for women. Before the pill, the risk of pregnancy was this constant factor hanging over female characters. In a way, it just wasn't afterwards, or at least it changed dramatically.
So it opened up new story possibilities.
Totally. It allowed the show to explore the massive shifts in gender roles and social rules with a kind of depth that maybe wasn't possible before, paving the way for characters like Peggy and Joan to have the trajectories they did.
That makes a lot of sense. And Don Draper's identity, that feels like the absolute core of the show, doesn't it?
It really is. You could argue identity is the show's main theme. Its leitmotif. Don Draper's entire public self is fake, built on stealing another man's name, Richard Whitman becoming Don Draper, to escape his past and create this successful image.
So the show is constantly playing with that idea.
Constantly. Self-reinvention, authenticity versus performance, the gap between the image we project and who we really are. One reviewer nailed it, calling Don's identity a sweet fabrication, spun out of opportunity, innuendo, and straight-up falsehood.
Like he's selling himself just like he sells products.
Exactly. The show questions what's underneath the branding, whether it's Lucky Strikes or Don Draper. He's perfectly attuned to what America wants, but maybe totally lost about who he is. It makes you think, how much are we all crafting our own personal brands?
That's a really resonant question. Now, the sexism in the workplace, it's depicted so starkly, it can be really tough to watch.
Oh, absolutely. It shows an environment where female employees are often just assumed to be available to male bosses.
Mm.
Misogynistic jokes, casual harassment, it's just part of the background noise.
Mm-hmm.
And the infidelity among the main male characters is rampant.
Yeah, Don, Roger.
Pretty much all of them at
Yeah.
some point. Someone wrote in the Washington Post how painful it was to watch because, quote, this behavior is not as far back in our past as we would like to think.
Hits close to home, maybe?
Right. But that pervasive sexism is also the wall that the female characters, especially Peggy and Joan, have to push against. It defines their struggles and their triumphs, though some critics felt the men often got away with things too easily.
Got off scot-free.
Yeah, that phrase was used. While the women faced more consequences, which maybe was just reflecting the reality of the time.
But some people called it feminist. That seems counterintuitive.
It does, but the argument, like from Stephanie Coontz, was that because it showed the sexism so honestly, without flinching or trying to make it palatable, it was actually deeply feminist. It forces you to recognize the numbness of Betty Draper or the male entitlement of Dawn.
So it's feminist because it's uncomfortable.
Kind of. There's definitely a tension there. Does it critique the sexism, or does it sometimes risk glorifying that boys' club era? Peggy's rise is inspiring, but maybe simplified compared to real women's struggles. It definitely sparked debate. Even President Obama mentioned Peggy Olson as giving him insight into his grandmother's experience.
That's incredible. And okay, the drinking and smoking, it's almost comical how much they do it.
It's wall-to-wall. Liquor cabinets in every office.
Yeah.
Endless boozy lunches, cocktails at all hours. You see the downside, like Freddie Rumsen getting fired after wetting himself.
Right. And Don eventually admits he has a problem, sort of.
He starts to realize it in season 4, yeah.
Yeah.
But back then, heavy drinking was often seen as just part of being a successful man, not necessarily addiction. One ad exec from the era, Jerry Della Femina, actually said the show underplayed the drinking.
Seriously? More drinking?
Yeah, he said bottles and desk drawers were the norm, not the exception. Hard to fathom now.
And the smoking is just as constant.
Everywhere. Chain smoking. Lucky Strike is a major client early on, and the health risks are mostly brushed off.
Until Don writes that "Why I'm Quitting Tobacco" ad.
Right, a huge turning point in season 4 after Lucky Strike dumps them. SCDP publicly swears off tobacco clients. It's a bold, maybe hypocritical move.
And then, tragically, Betty gets lung cancer at the end.
Yeah, a heavy smoker the whole series. It brings that whole theme full circle in a really devastating way.
And the actors weren't actually smoking real cigarettes.
No, thank goodness. John Hamm said they used herbal cigarettes, tobacco, and nicotine-free. Apparently, Weiner insisted because real cigarettes made the actors agitated, even sick, given how much they had to smoke.
What did the herbal ones taste like?
Hamm described them as tasting like a mixture between pot and soap. So, probably not pleasant.
Huh. Okay, beyond the office vices, how did the show handle the bigger cultural shifts, like the counterculture starting to emerge?
It did it really well, often through characters like Peggy. She gets drawn into that world through friends, like a photo editor at Life magazine.
So she experiences the beatnik scene?
Yeah, she encounters the loud music, the pot-smoking underground films. It puts her right in the middle of that rebellious creativity that was bubbling up against the mainstream Sterling Cooper world. There's a great scene highlighted by the Huffington Post.
Which one?
Where Peggy hangs out with her new beatnik friends in the lobby while Pete stays upstairs with the old guard partners. It just visually shows their paths diverging as the world changes. Very subtly done, but powerful.
Okay, now for a really sensitive topic, racism. How did Mad Men deal with race relations and the civil rights movement during that era? Because that's a tricky thing to get right.
It is, and this was, and still is, a major point of discussion and criticism. Some critics felt the show glossed over race.
How so?
Mainly by showing black characters almost exclusively in the service roles, elevator operators, maids, and rarely giving them storylines centered in their own homes or from their own perspectives. People pointed out the lack of black ad executives shown, even though some did exist and were starting to break barriers in the 60s.
So, a missed opportunity, some felt.
That was the argument, that it kept the focus too squarely on the white characters' experiences.
But others defended it.
Yes. Tanner Colby, writing in Slate, argued the show's portrayal was actually historically accurate for Madison Avenue. He pointed to episodes like The Fog.
Where Pete tries to market to black consumers?
Exactly, and gets shot down. Or when Don dismisses Peggy's idea to use Harry Belafonte in an ad for a client facing boycotts over hiring practices. Colby cited a real 1963 Ad Age report that found only about 25 black professionals in the entire industry out of over 20,000 employees.
Wow, that's a stark statistic.
Right, so Colby's point was that Mad Men's bravery was in showing Madison Avenue's cowardice and complicity on race, not in pretending it was more integrated than it was. It's a really complex debate about representation versus historical realism in a specific context.
Definitely a complex issue. Okay, shifting gears slightly, let's talk legacy. The show got incredible critical acclaim, right? Awards, best of lists.
Oh, massive acclaim. It's consistently ranked among the greatest TV shows ever made. It won 16 Emmys in total.
Including Outstanding Drama Series multiple times.
4 times in a row for its first 4 seasons.
Yeah.
That tied the record held by shows like Hill Street Blues, L.A. Law, The West Wing, and later Game of Thrones, plus 5 Golden Globes. The American Film Institute named it one of the top 10 shows every single year it was on air.
What did critics praise most?
Pretty much everything. The writing, the acting, the directing, that amazing visual style, and the historical authenticity. They called it groundbreaking, especially for how it immersed viewers in the recent past. A true critical juggernaut.
But it wasn't universally loved, right? Were there any notable criticisms?
Sure, no show pleases everyone. Some critics found the pacing slow. Especially early on, they called it lethargic.
Okay.
Mark Grief wrote a pretty famous critique in the London Review of Books, calling it an unpleasant little entry in the genre of now we know better.
Meaning?
Meaning he thought it just used 60 stereotypes, the sexism, the smoking, to make viewers in the present feel superior, like, look how far we've come, sort of smug history lesson.
Interesting take. Any others?
Daniel Mendelsohn criticized it for being more melodramatic than dramatic, suggesting it focused too much on reacting to big social issues rather than deeper internal character drama. So yeah, while the praise was overwhelming, there were thoughtful critiques too.
And what about the people who actually lived it? The ad execs from the 60s. Did they think it was authentic? Because we heard earlier some thought it underplayed the drinking.
Right. Well, opinions that were all over the map. Fascinating. Robert Levinson, who consulted on the show and worked at BBDO back then, said Weiner absolutely captured it. The drinking, the smoking, the office relationships. He said it was exactly right.
Okay, so some validation there.
Yeah. And Jerry Della Femina agreed about the smoking, the prejudice, the bigotry being accurate.
But others disagreed. Strongly.
Oh, yeah, strongly. Alan Rosenshine, who also came up through BBDO and eventually led it, called the show a total fabrication. He claimed anyone talking to women like the characters did would have been fired instantly.
Really? That seems hard to believe given everything else.
Well, that was his take. And George Lois, another legendary ad man from that era, was even harsher. Called it nothing more than the fulfillment of every possible stereotype.
What was his main issue?
He argued real madmen were passionate creatives working super hard, joyous days, not like the often angsty characters on the show. He even said Don Draper's ad work was terrible and wouldn't have gotten him hired anywhere real. Called Draper too phony.
Wow, so a real split verdict from the insiders.
Completely. Andrew Cracknell, who wrote a book called The Real Madmen, also felt the show lacked authenticity, saying the real ad elite would have scorned Sterling Cooper's work. It just shows how subjective memory and experience can be.
That is fascinating. What about the language? Did they talk like that back then? Or did modern speech patterns creep in?
That's another interesting point. A study by Benjamin Schmidt at Harvard looked into this. He found that while the show avoided using obviously anachronistic words that didn't exist yet, it did use certain words and phrases much more frequently than people actually did in the 1960s.
Like what?
Things like the phrase need to, as in I need to finish this, or feel good about. Even words like euthanize. And lots of modern business jargon crept in, like leverage or signing bonus.
So subtle shifts.
Yeah, individually small, maybe, but the overall effect, according to Schmidt, could give a slightly misleading impression of how people actually spoke back then. The rhythm and common phrasing felt more modern than the vocabulary itself.
Gotcha. Okay, despite those debates, the show's impact was huge, right? On viewership, on AMC, on TV in general.
Undeniably massive. It was a total game changer for basic cable. The viewership grew steadily, started solid at 1.65 million for the premiere, but by season 5, the premiere hit over 3.5 million viewers.
Which was huge for AMC at the time.
Record-breaking for them. It completely elevated AMC's brand. And being the first basic cable show to win the Emmy for Outstanding Drama Series 4 years running, that shattered ceiling.
And paved the way for other shows.
Absolutely. Critics credit Mad Men with basically kicking off this era of peak TV. giving AMC the confidence and credibility to launch huge hits like Breaking Bad and The Walking Dead. It showed that complex, high-quality drama could thrive on basic cable.
Did it inspire other shows directly?
Oh, yeah. There were direct comparisons, like TNT's Trust Me, and a whole wave of 60-set shows followed. The Playboy Club, Pan Am, often seen as trying to capture that Mad Men magic. Plus, its influence is felt in later acclaimed shows like The Americans, *Halt and Catch Fire*, The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, even BoJack Horseman.
And the cultural impact, fashion, decor.
Huge. Suddenly, everyone was interested in those sharp early 60s suits, the fedoras, the skinny ties, those cool glasses. Mid-century modern furniture had a massive resurgence.
And Christina Hendricks's influence.
Yeah, that was reported a renewed appreciation for a more curvaceous figure, supposedly linked to a rise in breast augmentations in the UK around 2010. And baby names. Betty jumped in popularity after the show hit big.
That's wild. Even President Obama referenced it.
He did. In his 2014 State of the Union, talking about equal pay for women, he said it was time to ditch workplace policies that belong in a Mad Men episode.
Wow, that's mainstream penetration.
Totally. Weiner was honored by it, and they even put up that sculpture of Don Draper's silhouette from the credits on a bench outside the Time Life building in New York in 2015, a permanent fixture.
That's amazing. And fittingly, for a Shing About ads, the marketing for Mad Men itself was pretty elaborate, wasn't it?
Oh, AMC went all out. They really tried to make the campaigns feel as stylish and smart as this show. For season 2, they did this huge campaign. They decked out the Grand Central subway shuttle in New York with life-size posters of Don Draper, end quotes. Had actors in period clothes handing out Sterling Cooper business cards. Really immersive stuff. Bloomingdale's had themed window displays. Giant billboards in LA.
Trying to bring the world to life.
Exactly. The campaign for season 5, after that long break, was a bit controversial, though. They used that falling man image from the credits on posters everywhere.
And people linked it to 9/11.
Some did, yeah. The New York Times pointed out the similarity to the famous 9/11 photo. Some victims' families found it insensitive, though AMC insisted it was purely about Don's fictional struggles. Other posters just boldly said, "Adultery is back."
Subtle.
Not exactly. Some critics thought that was a bit crude for such a nuanced show.
And they did online stuff, too. Interactive things.
Yeah, lots of that. Partnered with Banana Republic for a Mad Men casting call, send in a photo, maybe get a walk-on role. They had apps and games like Mad Men Yourself, where you could create an avatar, a cocktail recipe app, even a fake Sterling Cooper Draper Price job interview game online.
Yeah.
All about engaging the fans.
Okay, one last area product placement. There were so many real brands featured. Lucky Strike, Heinz, Coke. Were those paid placements, like the agency pitching clients?
That's what a lot of people assumed, but apparently mostly no. It's a common misconception.
Really? So why use real brands?
Primarily for realism. Matthew Weiner was pretty adamant about this. He said there was actually very little paid placement, and the idea was widespread was just an illusion propagated by the network trying to drum up ad business.
So which ones were paid, did he say?
He named only 4.
Yeah.
Jack Daniels, Heineken, Unilever, and Hilton. And the Hilton one was apparently more of a thank you payment after they had already used the brand in a storyline.
Did those deals cause any problems?
Oh, yeah. The Jack Daniels placement got a complaint filed against it by a consumer group because of how it was shown alongside, sex and heavy drinking.
And Heineken?
Weiner called that deal a disaster. Heineken was the sole sponsor for the season 2 finale, but then their own lawyers objected to depictions of irresponsible drinking in the show airing next to their ads.
Awkward.
Very. And he apparently hated the retro-style commercials Unilever made using the Mad Men sets. Because of all that hassle, Weiner basically swore off product placement deals for the show after 2012. He wanted full creative control.
But they did use some real ad stuff without paying.
Yes. Like the "It's Toasted" slogan for Lucky Strike, though.
Yeah.
That slogan was actually from 1917 in real life.
Yeah.
And the huge one, the implication in the finale that Don Draper created Coca-Cola's famous 1971 Hilltop ad, "I'd like to buy the world a Coke." They didn't have to pay Coke for that iconic ending.
That's amazing. And Heinz used Don's fictional ads later.
They did. In 2017, Heinz actually ran a campaign using the Pass the Heinz ads that Don Draper pitched and got rejected for in a season 6 episode, Life Imitating Art, Imitating Advertising.
It really is clear that Mad Men was so much more than just a period piece about advertising. It's this incredibly crafted world holding up a mirror to a really pivotal time in American history, and in doing so, makes us look at ourselves too.
Exactly right. From the groundbreaking way it told stories, the incredibly deep character studies, to how it unflinchingly looked at identity, gender, race, addiction, it just leaves you with so much to chew on. I think its real power is showing how those ingrained assumptions work, how bias shapes lives even subtly. It forces you to think about how far we've really come.
Yeah, and maybe how much hasn't changed. It feels relevant still.
Very relevant. It reflects their past, but
Mhm.
yeah, often our present too.
So if you haven't watched Mad Men, maybe give it a shot. It holds up incredibly well. And if you have seen it, perhaps thinking about some of this stuff gives you a reason to revisit that world.
Definitely. And as you think about Mad Men, maybe consider this. In our world today, which is just saturated with images and selling, what kind of personal ad campaigns are we running for ourselves? Consciously or not. What's the truth beneath the surface we project? The show asks that about its characters constantly, but it's really asking about us too, our own identities in this ever-changing landscape.